The house was nothing but ash and blackened bones. Smoke still curled from the remains, twisting to the cold morning air like ghosts refusing to leave. Officer Mark Hensley slowed his cruiser when he saw it, a German shepherd, soaked, trembling, sitting motionless beside the ruins. Its eyes tracked him, not with fear, but with something deeper, almost pleading. The dog's collar was scorched, name tag half melted. Around its paws, the earth was scratched raw, as if it had been digging. Mark didn't know it yet, but what that K9 was guarding would haunt the entire town of Ashford Falls. If stories that stay with you matter, stay till the end, and consider following for more true-hearted tales like this one. The rain hadn't stopped since dawn. It fell in soft, miserable sheets, tapping on the cruiser's hood as Officer Mark Hensley sat there for a long minute, engine idling, eyes fixed on the dark silhouette of what used to be a house. The address had come in around 6:17 a.m., possible structure fire, one survivor. Dispatch said the blaze had started sometime in the night, out in the hills beyond County Road 19. Out here, there were no hydrants, no quick response times. Just long stretches of pine forest and dirt road, and the lonely hum of the wind through telephone wires. Mark finally stepped out. His boots sank into mud. The air smelled of smoke and rain-soaked timber, a scent that never left you once it settled in your clothes. His flashlight beam caught on the shape again, the dog, sitting by the remains. "Hey there, buddy," Mark said softly, his voice carrying over the steady hiss of rain. The dog didn't move. Its fur was matted with ash and mud, and its ears flicked once when he spoke. There was something deliberate about its stillness. It wasn't just scared, it was waiting. Mark crouched, keeping his distance. "You alone out here?" The dog tilted its head slightly, eyes wet and unblinking. When Mark shifted his light, he saw the melted collar more clearly. The tag was half gone, the letters barely legible, but he caught one word. "Blitz." "Blitz," he murmured. "Good boy." Behind them, the house groaned, the last of its beams collapsing inward with a hollow crack. The fire crews had left hours ago. They'd said it was too late by the time anyone noticed the smoke. One fatality confirmed. Possibly two, but no one had found any remains yet. The fire had burned too hot. Blitz suddenly stood and moved toward a patch of dirt beside what looked like the edge of the foundation. He whimpered once, then began pawing at the ground again. Mark frowned, stepping closer. The soil was freshly disturbed, deep grooves and wet clumps scattered around. "You been digging all night?" he asked quietly. Blitz stopped, panting, then looked back at him, the kind of look that seemed to ask for help. Mark radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm at the scene of that structure fire on County 19. There's, AK-9 here. Appears to belong to the victims. Still on site. I think I might have something worth checking." Static. Then the dispatcher's voice. "Copy that, Unit 7. Backup's tied up at the crash on Highway 3. You're alone for now. Proceed with caution." "Roger." He turned back toward the digging spot. The rain was thinning now, misting instead of pouring. Mark grabbed a small shovel from his cruiser's trunk, one he kept for car rescues, and returned to the site. Blitz sat back, watching closely, tail low. The first few inches came up easy, wet soil, charred debris. Then something metallic caught the light. A small tin box, blackened and dented but intact. Mark brushed the dirt off carefully and pried it open. Inside were photographs. Old, worn prints, edges curled from heat. He lifted one with gloved fingers, a man in uniform, smiling beside a woman holding a baby. Behind them, the same burnt house stood, years younger, alive with color. Mark frowned, glancing back at Blitz. "You were guarding this," he whispered. The dog whined again, lowering its head. Mark pocketed the tin box carefully and looked toward the scorched remains. The rain had washed most of the soot away, revealing pieces of furniture, a cracked window pane, and something else. Faint outlines in the dirt, like footprints. He froze. The prints didn't lead away. They led into the ashes and stopped abruptly near where the floor had collapsed. Small prints, not adult-sized. He swallowed hard. "Oh, God!" Blitz stood again, pacing nervously, tail flicking. Mark radioed back. Dispatch. I might need forensic support out here. Possible secondary victim, possibly juvenile. Copy that. ETA 40 minutes minimum. You sure, Hensley? He looked at the footprints again, then at Blitz. Yeah, I'm sure. He crouched near the edge, shining his light down into Black Hollow, where the living room once was. Steam rose from the wet ashes. Then something caught his eye. Beneath the debris, a faint glint of color. A toy, a small red fire truck, its paint blistered by heat. Jesus, Mark muttered under his breath. Kid was here. Blitz barked once, sharp and sudden, making him flinch. Then the dog backed up, staring toward the tree line. What is it? Mark asked. Another bark, lower this time, almost a growl. The woods beyond the house were thick, dark even in daylight. Mark turned his light toward the trees. Nothing but mist and motionless trunks. But then he heard it. A soft rustle. A footstep, maybe. Someone moving just out of sight. He drew his sidearm instinctively. Sheriff's Department. Whoever's out there, come out slowly. No response. Just a steady patter of rain on leaves. Blitz took a few steps forward, hackles raised, growling deep in his throat. Then silence again. Mark waited another few seconds before lowering the weapon. All right, he muttered. Maybe it's just an animal. He turned back toward the cruiser. The tin box in his pocket suddenly felt heavier. He wanted to look at the photos again, to make sense of them. But before he reached the door, Blitz barked again, this time desperate. Mark turned sharply. The dog was at the hole again, but not digging now. He was whimpering, backing away from the edge, ears flattened. Then Mark saw why. Beneath the burnt floorboards, something shifted. A fragment of charwood gave way, revealing fabric, torn, half buried. The color was wrong for the debris, pale blue, like a child's shirt. Mark felt his chest tighten. Oh no! He called it in. Dispatch. Confirm coroner on standby. I've got remains. Juvenile. Age unknown. Blitz stood beside him again, silent now, not shaking anymore. Just still. Mark knelt, hand on the dog's back. You stayed here all night, huh? Guarding them. Blitz didn't react. He just stared into the hole. For a long time, neither of them moved. Rain fell around them, smoke still rising faintly from the ruins. And somewhere in the trees that rustle came again, but this time it didn't sound like the wind. By the time the backup arrived, the daylight was fading. The fire investigator, Carl Brenner, stepped out of his truck, heavy boots crunching over gravel. He was a thick man with a permanent scowl and a cigarette that never seemed to go out. Mark briefed him quietly, showing the box and the photos. Brenner barely glanced at them before muttering, "Probably electrical. These old country houses go up fast. Electrical doesn't leave child-sized prints in the ash," Mark said. Brenner gave him a sidelong look. "You sure those weren't rescue crew tracks?" "They don't match. Too small. And I was told the only survivor was the father. Taken to County General at 4 a.m. Brenner raised an eyebrow. "Father survived?" "Yeah. Name's Ryan McCarthy. Unconscious when they pulled him out. Severe burns. Still in ICU." Brenner exhaled smoke. Then this just got complicated. Later that night, after everyone cleared the scene, Mark stayed behind. Blitz refused to get into the animal control truck. Clawed the ground, barked, wouldn't move. So Mark offered to take him to the station, kennels himself. He opened the passenger door. "Come on, Blitz. I'll keep you safe." The dog hesitated, then climbed in slowly, curling on the seat beside him. The smell of wet fur filled the car. Mark turned the ignition, headlights sweeping across the ruined house one last time. That's when he saw it. In the rear view mirror, a flicker of movement at the edge of the woods. A figure standing there, just beyond the light. Too far to make out clearly, but tall, still, and watching. Mark blinked, and it was gone. He exhaled, forcing his pulse to slow, and shifted into drive. As the cruiser rolled away, Blitz lifted his head and stared out the window. Not at the road ahead, but back at the ashes of the house. Like he knew something was still there. Something that hadn't burned. The storm broke by morning, But the clouds still hung low over Ashford Falls, pressing down on the town like a heavy lid. Mist rolled to the pine grove that ringed the old highway, and the wet smell of char lingered even miles from the ruins. Officer Mark Hensley hadn't slept. He sat in his cruiser outside County General, watching the hospital doors slide open and close, people coming and go like shadows through glass. Blitz was in the back seat, restless, occasionally whining. The kind of sound that wasn't pain, but longing. Mark glanced back at him. "You'll see him soon, buddy. We just gotta make sure he's stable first." The K-9 didn't blink. His eyes stayed fixed on the building. Inside, the fluorescent lights felt too bright. The halls smelled like antiseptic, and coffee left too long on a burner. Mark signed in at the front desk and flashed his badge. "Officer Hensley, I'm here to check on Ryan McCarthy, the fire victim from County Road 19. The nurse, a tired-looking woman with dark circles under her eyes, hesitated before answering. He's still in critical, but conscious now. Only allowed one visitor at a time. Family hasn't shown up yet." Mark nodded. "I won't be long." She led him down a quiet hall lined with closed doors. When she stopped, she turned with a faint warning in her tone. "He's heavily sedated. Confused. Don't push him too hard." "Understood." The room was dim, blinds half-drawn. Machines hummed softly, tubes trailing from the bed where Ryan McCarthy lay, or what was left of him. His face was bandaged on one side, his hands swathed in gauze. But the eyes that opened when Mark entered were startlingly alert. "Mr. McCarthy," Mark began quietly, "I'm Officer Hensley. I was at your property yesterday." The man's lips twitched, dry and cracked. "Blitz." His voice rasped like burnt paper. Mark stepped closer. "Yeah, the dog's safe. He made it. He's been staying by your house since the fire." Ryan blinked slowly, emotion flickering through the pain. "Good boy," he whispered. Then, after a moment, Did you find her?" Mark hesitated. "Your daughter?" Ryan nodded weakly. Mark drew in a breath. "We found signs someone was there, but not remains. We're still searching the site once the debris cools." The man's hand trembled slightly against the sheets. His voice cracked. She was upstairs. I tried. God, I tried." He turned his head away, teeth clenched. "It happened so fast. I woke up and—" He stopped. His breathing hitched. Mark waited, letting the silence stretch. The machines beeped softly. Ryan's next words came out like a confession. "I didn't start that fire." Mark frowned. "No one's accusing you, sir." "You should." Ryan's gaze cut toward him, sharp, haunted. "Because someone wanted us gone. You think it was an accident, but it wasn't. Who would want to hurt you?" Ryan didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted toward the small window, where pale daylight bled through the blinds. "You don't know what I found out," he whispered. "About them?" "About who?" But Ryan's pulse monitor began to spike. He coughed hard, body jerking with pain. A nurse rushed in seconds later, motioning Mark out. "That's enough for today. Officer, he needs rest." Mark stepped back reluctantly. As he left, Ryan's voice caught through the doorway. Barely audible, broken but urgent. "Don't let them near Blitz." Outside, Mark leaned against the hallway wall, his mind spinning. "Don't let them near Blitz." The phrase felt strange, protective, almost paranoid. He drove back to the station, rain misting against the windshield again. Blitz perked up as the cruiser moved, eyes alert, ears twitching every time the engine slowed. Mark talked to him like he was a partner. Old habit. "Your guy's alive, Blitz." Said something weird, though you know what he meant. The dog just stared. When they arrived, Deputy Sarah Klein was already waiting by the entrance, arms crossed, cigarette tucked behind her ear. "Heard you found something nasty out there," she said. "Carl told me you're convinced it wasn't an accident." Mark shrugged. "Carl thinks everything's an accident until it explodes in his face." Sarah smirked faintly. "That's true. Still, the chief wants a full report by tonight. There's a lot of talk in town. Folks say the McCarthy place was cursed, or some crap like that." "Small towns love their curses," Mark muttered. "Makes evil easier to explain." He led Blitz to the kennel area, but the dog dug in his paws again, refusing to enter the gated stall. All right, right. Mark sighed. You can stay in the office. He unhooked the leash, and Blitz immediately went a corner, where a faint draft came through the old floor vent. Curling up, but still restless, Mark sat down at his desk, the tin box on the fire in front of him. He'd been meaning to go through the rest of those photos. When he opened again, a faint scent of smoke rose out, the kind of smell that clings to paper forever. Most of the pictures showed the McCarthy family through the years. Ryan, his wife Elise, and their daughter Lily. Birthday cakes. Christmas mornings. A picnic by the creek that ran behind their house. Ordinary moments frozen in time. But one photo stood out, newer, different. Ryan and another man standing in front of a construction site. The other man wore a dark coat. Smile too wide, arms slung around Ryan's shoulders. On the half-melted sign behind them, Mark could just make out a company name. Kellerman Realty and Development. Mark frowned. He knew that name. Kellerman had been trying to buy upland all through the county, especially near the woods. Prime spot for their new housing expansion. Ryan's property was right in the middle of it. He sat back slowly. So that's what this is about. Sarah glanced up from the doorway. What's what? McCarthy's land. He wouldn't sell. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You think Kellerman torched the place? Too early to say. But McCarthy said someone wanted him gone. Maybe he wasn't being paranoid. Sarah walked over, leaning on the desk. You gonna talk to Kellerman? I'll start with his foreman. The site's not far. The development lot was a muddy sprawl of half-built houses and idle machinery. Mark found the foreman, a gaunt man named Hollis, in a trailer office, nursing a thermos of coffee. When Mark flashed his badge, Hollis looked instantly nervous. If this is about Ryan, I already talked to your chief. I'm not here officially, Mark said, just trying to piece together what happened. Hollis hesitated. Ryan was a good guy. Stubborn, though, wouldn't budge on the sale. Kellerman offered him triple market value, but he said the land was his daughter's someday. Got heated a few times. How heated? Ryan accused Kellerman of cutting his power lines last month. Said someone sabotaged his generator too. I told him it was probably raccoons or weather, but he swore someone was watching the house at night. Watching? Yeah. Said Blitz went crazy a few times, barking into the woods. But when he went out with a flashlight, nothing there. Mark thought back to the rustling he'd heard, the figure at the tree line. His stomach tightened. Did Kellerman ever go out there himself? Hollis shifted uneasily. Once, maybe twice. Don't tell him I said this, but the guy's got a temper. The day before the fire, he stormed out of here saying, if McCarthy won't sell, nature will take care of it. I thought he meant the weather. Guess not. Mark wrote it down. Thanks. If Kellerman asks, you didn't talk to me. Wouldn't dare, Hollis said grimly. Back at the station, dusk was settling in. The rain had stopped completely, but the air was cold enough to bite. Mark hung his jacket on the rack, rubbing the back of his neck. Blitz was pacing near the window again, growling low. What is it now? Mark asked, stepping over. The dog's gaze was fixed outside, across the lot. Mark followed it and froze. A black SUV sat parked under the street lamp, engine off. No plates. The windows were tinted dark. He stepped outside slowly, hand on his holster. Can I help you? He called out. No answer. Then the driver's window rolled down halfway. A man in a tailor coat leaned out just enough to be seen. Slick hair, sharp smile. Kellerman, Mark said quietly. Officer Hensley, the man replied smoothly. Heard you've been asking about me. Just doing my job. Kellerman's eyes glinted. Then do it carefully. Fires are unpredictable things. You never know which way the wind blows, right? Mark tensed. You threatening me? Kellerman smiled wider. No, officer. Just offering advice. He rolled up the window, the SUV gliding away into the dark like it had never been there. Mark stood there for a long moment, rain dripping off the brim of his cap. When he turned back, Blitz was at the door, watching him, eyes sharp, unwavering. He muttered, Yeah, I saw it too, boy. That night, The dreams came. He saw fire, bright, deafening, devouring everything. He saw Blitz howling against the flames. And through the smoke, a small silhouette, a child's figure standing by the window, face pale, unmoving. Then, just as the heat roared closer, the figure turned and smiled. Mark woke, drenched in sweat, heart hammering. The station was dark except for the faint glow of his desk lamp. Blitz was whining softly, pawing at the door. "What is it?" Mark whispered. The dog looked back at him, then toward the window, where faint lights flickered to the trees outside. Not headlights, more like firelight. Mark grabbed his jacket and gun. "Stay close." They moved out into the night, toward the road leading back to ruins. The smell of smoke hit him before he even reached the hill. When he topped the rise, his stomach dropped. The McCarthy property, the ashes, were burning again. But this time, someone had lit the fire on purpose. And whoever it was still there. The night glowed orange again. Wind pushed smoke across the tree line, carrying the sharp, chemical sting of gasoline. Mark's cruiser screeched to a stop on the gravel shoulder as Blitz lunged against the door, barking wildly. The ruins of McCarthy House burned a second time. Smaller flames this time, controlled, deliberate, feeding on what little wood was left. Mark drew his flashlight and pistol and moved forward, every crunch of gravel sounding too loud. His breath clouded in the cold air. "Sheriff's Department. Step out where I can see you." No answer. Only the fire crackled. And something else, faint but clear. A sound that didn't belong. A shovel scraping dirt. He turned sharply, sweeping the beam across the clearing. Blitz growled, low and steady, ears locked toward the far corner of the foundation where the ground sloped toward the creek. Mark followed the dog's gaze and froze. Someone was kneeling in the dark, half lit by the flames, digging. "Freeze!" Mark shouted, training his gun. The figure stiffened, then rose slowly, hands up. A flashlight beam caught a familiar face. "Carl Brenner?" Mark's voice dropped. "What the hell are you doing?" The fire investigator's eyes were wide, sweat running down his forehead. "It's not what it looks like, Mark. You're out here alone, at midnight, pouring gas on a burned-out house." "I said it's not what it looks like." Blitz barked, the deep, furious kind that echoed off the trees. "Step away from the hole," Mark ordered. Carl hesitated, then dropped the shovel. "You don't understand. They told me to clean it up." "Who's they?" Carl looked down, shaking his head. "You think Kellerman does his own dirty work? You think this was some land dispute?" His voice cracked. "You weren't supposed to find the box." Mark felt a chill move through him. "You knew about it. I helped collect the evidence from the scene. I was supposed to turn it in, but Kellerman's guys got to me first. Said they'd make it right. Just needed everything gone. McCarthy was supposed to take the deal quietly, but he wouldn't. Then his wife found out." Mark took a step closer. "His wife?" Carl looked up, guilt and fear etched deep in his face. She figured out Kellerman wasn't just buying land. He was burying something under it. Mark frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Chemical drums. Old ones. From his manufacturing site in Ridgeport. He's been dumping them out here for years. Wanted to build over them before anyone could test the soil. Elise found records in his office. Tried to warn people. And then the fire." Carl nodded slowly. "I didn't light it, I swear, but someone did, and I knew if it came back to Kellerman, I'd be next. So I did what I was told. Cleaned up, destroyed what was left." Mark's voice hardened. "You're torching evidence, Carl." Carl's gaze darted past him suddenly into the woods. "You shouldn't have come here, Mark. He's not done." Before Mark could turn, a gunshot cracked through the night. Carl jerked backward, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. "Down!" Mark shouted, diving behind the rubble. Blitz bolted beside him, barking viciously. Another shot slammed into the dirt inches from his knee. Mark peered over the edge, scanning the dark tree line. Nothing, just a faint glint of metal. Then headlights flared on the ridge road. The black SUV. Kellerman. Mark hissed. The man stepped out calmly, coat fluttering in the heat. He held the gun low, confident. "I warned you, officer. Drop it." Mark yelled. Kellerman laughed softly. "You really think this town cares about one burned house and one stubborn cop? You think they'll mourn a man who couldn't mind his own business?" Blitz barked again, edging forward. Kellerman aimed. Dogs are loyal. Shame they're also replaceable. Mark fired first. The bullet struck the SUV's fender, ricocheting into the dirt. Kellerman ducked, returning fire. The sound tore through the clearing, sharp, deafening. Blitz darted sideways, barking furiously, drawing Kellerman's aim for just a second, just long enough for Mark to move. He rushed low, sliding behind a half-collapsed wall, flanking toward the left. Another shot, this one from Kellerman, hit a stone pillar, sending splinters into Mark's arm. Pain shot up to his shoulder, but he kept moving. Blitz lunged again, charging across the open space. "Blitz! No!" Too late. The German shepherd slammed into Kellerman's leg. Teeth sinking deep, the man screamed, stumbling back, gun clattering to the ground. Blitz tore into his sleeve, snarling, refusing to let go. Mark ran forward, kicking the gun away and pinning Kellerman to the ground. "You're under arrest, you son of a—" Kellerman twisted, grabbing a handful of dirt and shoving it into Mark's eyes. Mark fell back, coughing. Kellerman staggered to his feet, reaching for the dropped weapon. The shot came from behind. Carl Brenner, bleeding, barely standing, held his own sidearm, smoke curling from the barrel. His voice was ragged. "You said no one would get hurt." Kellerman turned, disbelief crossing his face before he crumpled to the ground. Mark rushed to Carl, catching him as he collapsed. "Stay with me, Carl. Come on." Carl's breath rattled. "Check the basement." His hand trembled, pointing toward the burned house. Under the floorboards. Elise knew. She tried to save the girl. They were hiding when it blew. His eyes unfocused. The last word slipped out as a whisper. "Sorry." He went still. Mark sat there for a long second, smoke and rain mixing in the air, the world spinning around him. Blitz came over and pressed his head into Mark's arm, grounding him, pulling him back. "Good boy," Mark whispered hoarsely. "Let's finish this." By sunrise, the fire was out again. The cleanup crews had yet to arrive. Mark, alone except for Blitz, followed Carl's dying words. He found what was left of the basement door, half collapsed, buried under cinders. Together, they cleared it with shovels and bare hands. The smell was thick, chemical, foul. When Mark pried the last beam aside, he saw them. Metal drums, stacked in rows, labels burned off but the hazard markings still visible beneath the soot. And beside them, something else. A small, scorched wooden chest. He opened it carefully. Inside was a child's bracelet. Pink, plastic, with little alphabet beads that spelled Lily. Mark swallowed hard, setting it down gently. He turned toward Blitz, who sat beside him, ears low. "You stayed here for her," Mark murmured. "You never left." The dog pressed closer, nose touching the bracelet. For a moment, the only sound was the wind through the trees. Then Mark noticed something. Faint scratches along the wood of the chest lid. He brushed away ash and saw letters, carved unevenly, maybe by a child hand. "Daddy, help us." He closed his eyes. That was what Blitz had been guarding all along. Not just a memory of his family, but the truth they died trying to protect. 2 weeks later, the town's quiet returned, but it wasn't the same quiet. Kellerman's death had made headlines. The investigation blew open half the county's corruption. They found dozens of buried barrels near development sites. Poisoned soil running straight into the river. Ryan McCarthy never recovered. He died in the hospital, never knowing his daughter's remains had been found. But Blitz lived. Mark adopted him officially, though everyone in town knew the dog had chosen him first. Most nights, Blitz slept by the window, staring out toward the dark horizon where McCarthy land still lay under federal quarantine. Sometimes Mark sat beside him, sipping coffee gone cold, thinking about that night, about the firelight on the trees, the man who tried to erase everything, and the one loyal soul who refused to leave until the truth was seen. He'd written the final report himself, closing it with one line. The K-9 remained at the scene until discovery was complete. His vigilance directly led to the recovery of key evidence and the identification of multiple criminal acts. The department owes him more than words. On a cold evening a month later, Mark drove back out to property, now fenced off, silent. Blitz jumped out of the cruiser and trotted ahead, stopping at the edge of the ashes. The air was still. No fire, no sound. Just pine trees whispering in the wind. Mark crouched down, running his hand through the dirt. The bracelet, cleaned and sealed, rested in his pocket. He took it out and set it down gently beside Blitz. "Rest easy now," he said quietly. "She's not alone anymore." Blitz let out a soft whine and lay beside the spot where the house once stood. His head rested on his paws. The last rays of sunset caught his fur, turning the grayish around him to gold. Mark stayed there until the light faded. When he finally stood, Blitz rose too, walking at his side without a sound. They didn't look back. Some things don't need closure, only witnesses. And sometimes that witness is 4 legs and a heart that remembers.